Okay, so I'm Diane Barrett. I'm here at the BE Collection, and I'm here today. And today's date is 8/30/2022. I'm here with Angela. We'll start with where you were born. Start simple questions about yourself.
Okay, well, I was actually born in New Jersey, but I left by the time I was 5, so I don't really even remember most of that. And lived all over California, different places based on where my dad's work was. So we moved around California. I lived in Northridge until the 71 earthquake, and then moved to Northern California and then back to Anaheim, where I kind of finished growing up from about 13 till college.
Did you work at Disneyland?
I did not, but all my friends did because we were like 5 miles away.
See the fireworks every night?
Every night, yeah. Just standing on the street. We were that close. So, yeah.
So what kind of work did your father do?
He worked for a company owned by Gulf and Western, which also owned Paramount Pictures. And they were a company that owned all different companies. So when I used to look through their annual report, you would see like the movie studios and then a cattle ranch. They own so many different things. So, yeah. But I went to college in Fullerton, the town next to Anaheim. I went to Fullerton College and I was studying to be a photographer there. And while I was
piqued your interest in photography?
Actually, I was always fascinated by it when I was a kid. And my mom had my dad had used a little Instamatic camera that I was fascinated by. And luckily my dad noticed that. He didn't notice a lot, but he did notice that I was really interested in cameras.
Right.
And one time he went on a business trip to Japan and he brought me back a Pentax K1000, which is to this day my favorite camera.
Right.
You have to do everything yourself on it. It doesn't do anything automatically. So it was a required camera for the first college class I took in photography, luckily. I loved my teacher in photography at Fullerton College. He was a graduate of Brooks Institute, which made me want to go to Brooks, but I couldn't afford to at the time. So, but I felt very grateful that I could take a lot of classes with him, and he really shared a lot of his art photography. Sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue. Shared a lot of his art photography knowledge with us. We used to do really unique photography stuff in class, like paint chemicals on a cotton sheet and expose the negative in the sun outside. Really cool stuff like that. But while I was at Fullerton College, just when I was joining the gay club, they abolished all clubs on campus rather than fund the gay club.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Statement. Right.
And it was the catalyst for me to be not only a photographer for the rest of my life, but to photograph the gay community, which it was called at the time, and especially lesbians, because I was one. So I grew up in Orange County, which we used to call behind the orange curtain, because it was so conservative and so homophobic.
So do you have siblings?
Yes, I have 3 brothers and a sister.
Any other gays in your family besides yourself?
Not in my immediate family. I believe my mother's aunt was a lesbian. She never married and she lived with another woman and helped her raise her children. So she was from Sicily.
The reason I ask that is my own curiosity, but also that as you read through the interviews, we're tracking the homosexual contact. And so we try to give a place for people to go and say, wow, look here's 80% of these people interviewed. So it's so far the percentage of genetic contact links is pretty great. Which I assume.
So you're saying a lot of people had relatives who were also homosexual?
That's right. And it's You'll find it in the link between the Cal State Dominguez Hills. She'll put it at the end of her, she does a little summation of the interview, and she'll indicate the contact, the genetic link, if there was one. So it's sort of fun. And it's good research.
I didn't know my aunt was a lesbian when I was a kid, though. I only realized that when I was an adult.
Was she a genetic link, or was she an aunt through marriage?
Oh, no, she was a blood relative, if that's what you mean.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm finding it pretty interesting. And so many people had siblings. We've interviewed about 4 people who had siblings who were gay also. My friend Sue Wegeman was interviewed, and her brother is gay. And when she came out to her mother said, "So?" Yeah.
Wow, that's a unique story. That's a unique story.
It's a fun story. I knew her mother; she was fun. But that when did you come out to your own parents, or did you?
Probably around 16 or 17.
When did you come out to yourself?
I was going to joke with you because I have this joke that people say, "How long did you know you were a lesbian?" And I say, "I noticed the nurse when I was born."
Did you?
Yeah. I just feel like that's how long I've known, even though I didn't know what it was called when I was a kid. I was very aware of being very different in some way. And
did you talk about it?
I didn't talk about it a lot, but what I did do was I just spoke my feelings when I had them. So my family would have been shocked, I think, if I had come out straight, because I was very vocal about being in love with Doris Day when I was very young, and absolutely in love with Ingrid Bergman when I was 10, and I mean, I would be very obvious where I remember these were the days when you couldn't record a movie. So I would turn the channel and an Ingrid Bergman movie would end and I would weep. So,
it was ended, right?
Because I missed her and I would be weeping, and I think it was hard for my family not to notice that. So
did you see the movie by yourself, or did you have a companion?
Often when I watch movies like that, I hoped I was alone just because I could swoon by myself more.
My friend from high school, Pat, loved Doris Day. Loved Doris Day. And we would go to all the Doris Day movies, and she would pick outfits. Like I could have the first outfit that Doris wore, and then she would pick the second one. And I just humored her. I was not as interested in Doris Day as she was. But I'm going to make sure she hears this story. She'll appreciate it. But it's a lot of going to the movies every Sunday.
Yeah, I bet.
Right. We were great moviegoers. So at what time did you have your first significant relationship with a woman?
Honestly, I would say because I was in such a conservative area, I desperately wanted to date in my teens, but I never did. I was petrified to do that. So my first girlfriend was a girl I went to high school with, and we didn't date until we were both in college.
Same college?
Yeah, Cal State Fullerton. That's where I went after Fullerton College.
And did you stay connected with her? Did you have a short?
Oh, yeah, we're lifelong friends.
That's great, huh? I'm still friends with Pat. She is
that's
right. She's not a lesbian.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
She brought me to California, which is amazing. I'm happy to say. She said, "You have to get out of there. Let's go to California." I said, "Okay."
Wow, so she was very helpful in that way.
Yeah, she was a really good friend. She's in Florida now. So she has a totally different life. She was the first woman pro football player, actually.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Interesting. So she was proud of that. Certainly unique.
Oh, I would be too if I were her.
Did you get employment as a photographer out of college? Or how did you?
I had a million different photography jobs in my life. And when I first started out, it seemed like I was always doing it part-time. I could never seem to make a living at it full-time. I didn't like studio work, so I think that might be why. So I would take photos for real estate, realtors, just everything under the sun. One of my favorite jobs was being an aerial photographer. I flew in a helicopter and took pictures of properties every day.
That's great.
Felt like I won the lotto when I got that job.
I know. What happened to it?
Lasted 2 years, and then Google Earth started.
So that took care of that.
And the whole department closed, and I was the department. So,
have you always been self-employed, so to speak?
not always. I actually had a 20-year career in the casino business. And that was really how I made my money. It wasn't really my focus in life. It enabled me to make enough money to also take enough time off to photograph the community and attend every lesbian event I could find.
You were busy.
I was busy because I, originally had to pay for my own film. We didn't have digital when I started in the 80s. But it was really hard to photograph the community in the 80s because people were still very closeted.
We even find that with this.
Yeah.
Right. Still the hesitancy. So.
I still today could shoot an event and have somebody who maybe was a teacher or is a teacher be like, no, please don't take my picture.
Right.
I think some people are still very worried about losing their careers even today for being gay. I think that time should be up, but it's not totally.
That's why we start with women at 30 and above. That's my own margin or, concern about if you're 30 and below, you're still searching, and the search might reveal to people things about you that you don't want them to know. So that's my mistrust. So it's still there. But I notice it when now we're doing the voice vote, Roe v. Wade, and that's holding people back from putting out their voice. We don't talk about it, but it's a sense. It's pretty real. So you've had an exciting life. How'd you get connected with the Mazer?
Well, honestly, I was taking pictures in the community. I really did go to lesbian events like it was a job. In fact, I did it so much that at some point I met the Lesbian News photographer, and when she couldn't shoot something, I would, and then they hired me as a staff person for a few years as well. So in the 90s, during the lipstick lesbian days, I was photographing pictures in the bars and anywhere lesbians went for the Lesbian News during that time.
That was a great paper. Really?
Yeah, I honestly, when I was a young lesbian and I was, 22, 24, whatever, it told me everything there was to do in the community. And so I would go looking for it before it was even out. I was so desperate to get it as fast as I could to know what I could be doing that month. And since I spent most of my life focused on lesbians and lesbian events, the Lesbian News was really important to me.
Right. No, I remember sitting at a coffee shop and there was a little newsstand there at the time, and I looked over there and said, Lesbian News. I thought, whoo, I should read that paper. It was amazing to me that it was just so out to the public. Here I was at a public place and there was the Lesbian News sitting there. And then later,
I'm sorry.
Later on, we advertised with Jinx, and so we got.
Oh, I was going to say I was always very indebted to Jinx for starting that.
I know.
The LN and indebted to Ella for taking it over later, and it was monumental in my life, definitely.
So, in your compassion and passion for photography, did your partners sort of match that, or were they also in the same field, or?
No, usually my girlfriends had totally different careers, but they were obviously lesbians because they were my partners.
Right.
So they would often go to a lot of events with me, and I would take pictures and they would enjoy the event. So for example, I photographed Outfest Film Festival for about 20 years. And, everybody I know that knows about it loves to go, and it's a great organization and such a fun film festival. I think one of the best things I've ever done was volunteer for the center and for Outfest and other LGBTQ organizations.
So what's your role in the center? I know it's very important. How would you define it?
At the June Mazer Lesbian Archives, you mean?
Right. That center. So many centers.
I'm the director of communications, but I really do a little of absolutely everything here. So I first came in late 2006. So I've been here a long time.
Right?
Yeah. And
what drew you to it?
I'm sorry?
What drew you to it?
Oh, I think you asked me that and I didn't answer, but I was taking pictures in the community. I was very active in the lesbian community, and I ran into some of the women from the board of the Mazer at a 40+ lesbian group at the Long Beach Center. Mm-hmm. And they did a quiz on lesbian history, and I knew all the answers. And they said,
you won. Right, good.
And so they said, you have to come to the archives. And it was a perfect fit because I was taking pictures of Pride since 86, 87. And I just kept those photos in a box, and they made me happy, but I never thought anyone would care about them except me.
Right.
And when I got to the archives, I found out that lesbians had been preserving and saving this same history for decades. This
place to go with it.
Sorry,
they
say
had
that.
Pictures, but they didn't have the place to put them.
Yeah, and I didn't know anyone would ever want my pictures besides me when I started taking them. I took them because I never had lesbians in my young life, and I felt alone and isolated. And I always say I grew up in Orange County being absolutely sure of two things: one, that I was a lesbian, and two, that I was the only one on the planet. And
that kind of isolation, I think that still exists, unfortunately.
Yeah, I really do too, depending on your location, where you live, and things like that. But I never wanted anybody to feel that way ever again. And so that was a big catalyst for me, making sure that this community got documented for people who came after me. And that's exactly what this archive was doing. They were collecting lesbian history and feminist women's history also, now for 42 years. Because when they went looking for lesbian history, they couldn't find it anywhere. So they started this archive, you know? And so it was a perfect fit for me. So I've been here ever since.
That's great. What's your dream for the archives? Do you have one?
Honestly, I'd love the archives to have $100,000 a year budget.
Mm-hmm.
We
That's
don't.
Not very much.
No, it's not asking for a lot, is it? We should probably ask for more.
But I can tell just from our budget for this that we're doing, 100,000 is not very much. And
right.
And larger endeavor.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the truth is, we would need a lot more, because ideally we'd like to have one full-time paid staff person. That's something we've never had here. And two assistant archivists as well. So that's really the goal for the future now, is to have 3 people on staff. For about 30 years, this archive was completely volunteer run. So I think that time needs to be over. Not that we don't, not that we don't love volunteers. We love them, and we'll always use volunteers.
Always need them, right.
But it's great to have a full-time staff. We don't even know what that's like yet. So that's a really big goal for the future.
Those grants should help with that, right?
Yeah, that's
grants as they run out.
Yeah, that's the thing with grants is they pay for archivists to do certain projects, and when those projects are done, the archives are done too. The archivists are done too. So, yeah, we need to do a lot more fundraising. We've always done some, but we need to kick it up, you know, in the coming years.
But that's a job right there. I mean,
it is. It's just it is, and it's part of my job. It's just a job that I've never had formal training in, so that makes it harder. But we do have other people on the board who are great at writing grants and have more experience with fundraising. So thank goodness.
That's good. these podcasts seem a good connection, don't they? I don't know a lot about them. I'm learning. But we really appreciate the opportunity to be part of the Mazer. And we promote the Mazer, and people really are honored if they didn't know about it, to know about it. So we try to keep that going for you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I'm glad they feel that way. I mean,
Well, it means a lot to them. So it's out there. The name is out there. It's, getting, so, oh yeah, okay, good. I'm glad this is part of it. I mean, so it always has a positive response. So thank yourself for that.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that feedback.
Never hear anything negative, ever.
Wow. I always,
That could happen, but it's not there, which is good.
That's really good to hear. I often say to my board, to have a really great reputation in the whole lesbian community is no small feat.
No, that's right.
Because like any community, they're varied and very different people and very eclectic. Mm-hmm. So that's really good to know. I'm very happy to hear that.
So let us know how we can continue. We'll talk later about other specifics, but no, it's always positive, always.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They're proud to be included because I tell them, I said, now you're a part of it. You can go on there looking for the bee collection, you'll be in there. That's interesting now. And it hasn't been that long when you think about it. No,
I think you've done a fantastic amount of interviews in a really short time, right?
We had no idea what we were doing. We wanted to have it sort of brief because you're already doing the extended life interviews, which is necessary and good. But we wanted this brief so that people could go there, say, maybe I want to be a photographer. And then they say, oh, look, here's Angela. She's, let me see what she went through. Because I think for a woman, if you don't have one of the traditional careers, like photography is not traditional as I look at it, that you don't know exactly how to get started. I mean, you just threw yourself out there. As I summarize what I've learned from you in this brief time, you just said, okay, I want to do this. I have to put myself where lesbians are. Start taking pictures. Nobody invited you. So, but that's something a young person or any age person could learn.
No, you're right. These can be very mentoring, a lot of the videos, I think.
And I learned a lot of history. I learned that in 1962, women were denying their sexuality just to get a job at the universities. And so all those things, and they got through it, but it had an impact on them. So all this information in a very short amount of time is available. So I like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So where it goes, I don't know. Continuing.
Well, the fact that it's available is amazing. I mean, like I said, I started taking pictures in the 80s and people were so closeted that it was hard to find lesbians who would be out. I would bring a camera. Oh yeah, I would bring a camera to some events and they'd say, you can't come in with the camera. Right. So I'd have to go put it back in my car and then go back in the event without it.
Wow. Just the fact that you went from film to digital in your lifetime. I mean, you're not an old person. So
it was a big change.
Yeah.
What's really crazy is film is cheaper now for me to buy than when I was 17. It's so strange.
Wonder why that is.
I don't know, because it used to be all about the price of silver. Now I'm not so sure what it's about.
That's true. I don't know enough about it. But so what's your dream for yourself for the future? Where do you see your life going?
Well, honestly, at some point, I don't think I would ever leave the Mazer completely, even if I retire or whatever. I think I could do oral histories with women for the rest of my life.
It's so interesting.
It is fascinating. Women are fascinating, and they often will start an interview, as you might know, saying, I haven't done that much in my life. And the first story they tell you blows you away,
Oh, they say, I'm boring. You won't find anything interesting about me. I said, well, let's try it.
Yeah, and people like that are always the ones that say, "Oh, I was the first woman in the industry I worked in."
Right.
And you're like, I don't really find that boring.
Right. Want to talk about it?
And it's not boring because the first women in any field usually had some good and really bad stories about that. So,
But just the evolving of your own sexuality into a career and how is you weave it in, so to speak, I think is very necessary to be out there and helpful to people, because you're not a lesbian and nothing else. You are a lesbian. You're a lesbian nurse. You're a lesbian photographer. It's just part of who you are. So denying it is dangerous for yourself and others. That's my
yeah, I agree. I think it's very dangerous. And I think it doesn't help anyone in society at all
no.
to force people to lie about who they really are. Because then when they get to be about 50, they might be married, they might have all kinds of children, and they break up the marriage and they move on to something else suddenly. And everyone's shocked because they didn't know that they were never really living their real life.
Mm-hmm.
So until we stop forcing people to lie about who they really are for our convenience or comfort, I think that's always going to happen, unfortunately.
It's changing. I wonder if the titles that people are taking on are going to be confusing. It's like we had these, you're a lesbian, you're a gay male, it was pretty straightforward. And now we're expanding. So defined differently.
Well, there's definitely a gender revolution now. Absolutely.
Yes.
Young people are having a gender revolution. There's no question.
Good luck.
But I do think the part about that I actually really welcome is that sexual socialization was really intense for me. Even pre-verbal, I knew before I could speak that I was supposed to like pink things and not blue things. And I really liked blue things. And I knew I wanted to wear blue jeans and not a pink dress. And I wasn't supposed to do that either. And I knew those things really early in my life, and we had really rigid rules about that. And I think young people have just had it with that. They're like, no more. We will not fit in those two boxes,
I understand that. That you do know, you just don't have the words for it. I knew when I was looking at the cleavage of the nun teaching me how to read when I was 5, that I was supposed to say anything about that. But right. I knew that I liked that. And I became a really good reader to this day. So it's amazing how knowing develops early.
And I think
say if all these criminals at one time in their life were held, at that moment of birth, somebody held them. What happened to them after that is amazing, good and bad. But if they could keep that moment of being held and being safe, our life would be better. But that's me. So we know things. We just have to keep them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is fun. I like getting to know you. This is we've had this relationship, sort of a business relationship. Now it's developing, so we can work together and get to know each other better, which is a compliment.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's great. And I think the work you've done with the over 100 interviews now.
We kept counting. When we were at about 40, I said, well, we'll have a party when we have 100. I never thought we'd get to 100.
Wow. And you really did that.
And people said, well, we're at 70. They started counting and we had a party. So,
yeah, you really did that quite fast, if you ask me, too.
But all the women all over the country that I've met, that's the difficult thing, not being able to continue the connection. At least we're in California. But when I realized, oh, you're in South Carolina, I've never been.
Yeah. Well, there are good and bad things that have come out of the pandemic. And I think those are the things that you can't go next door and see that woman again tomorrow, but you can the fact that you could interview her at all is, because
Right.
of the technology we all started using because of COVID, really.
Mhm. So you're now in a relationship with Heather? Is that
Yes.
your partner? Okay. How long have you been together?
3 years.
Oh, good.
She's a librarian, so it's like a perfect match for
Because you're in Long Beach. I think all librarians live in Long Beach.
There are quite a few, but I always
know.
say, I wish I had $1 for every lesbian librarian I've met. It would have a lot of money, let me tell you,
Really?
because not all in Long Beach.
Right. I noticed, but I thought, wow, they all live in Long Beach. I never knew that. So congratulations. I
Thank
hope to
you.
meet her also. So do that in the future.
Yeah, that would be great.
So what's your favorite fairy tale or Disney movie?
Um, you know, I usually didn't relate to fairy tales very much, so
We were close to Disneyland now.
that's true. That's true, but nobody there looked like me. So
They still don't. I don't think they've corrected that.
yeah, no, I couldn't relate. But I mean, honestly, I think that's something I would love to change a little bit in the world, is that when we do tell stories and we do have films about people, they represent real people and all kinds of people. So anyway,
That's part of your future. I could see that.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
That's part of your future. When I said, where do you see your dream for the future? That's an important statement, I think.
Yeah, honestly, here's my dream for the future. Actually, it's kind of more philosophical than literal. And I would say, I would like the world to not be homophobic. I would like the world to end bullying forever. And I would like the world to not be sexist for the first time ever in its history.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my wishes and my dreams for the future.
Those are good ones. Unfortunately, I think that we're going in a direction that doesn't support that.
Well, I'm hoping that's not the majority of people, but we'll see.
Right. That's right. Time will tell. So if you knew your time was ending and you were about to die next year, how would you like to be remembered?
Honestly, I think I'd like to be remembered for everything we just talked about.
That's a long list.
Being a professional lesbian, being a professional photographer, making it very well known to everybody who knew me that lesbians were important to me, lesbian history is important to me, feminists, women and the feminist movement was really important to my life. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget, as long as I live, when Helen Reddy won a Grammy in 1973 for I Am Woman. And she stood up and said, I'd like to thank God because she makes everything possible. And my father and my brothers lost their minds.
So you'd like to be remembered for everything that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I think those have been the most important things to me in life. I think it's also worth mentioning that people are the most important thing to me in my life, above anything. And I'd like to be known for that too. And I think I am known for that. People who know me well know that I always put people first before anything else.
Mm-hmm. That shows. I like that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to tell you too, I mentioned this to you another time, but one of the things I'm really proud of is when people use photos of lesbians, they're often my photos.
I know, that's great. Yeah.
And one of the examples I gave you was you have at least 3 interviews where the person who you interviewed gave you a photo that I took.
I think that's great. Yeah.
I'm so proud of that because that was what my life has been about in a big way. So really, really proud of that.
Yeah, to see it expand into a direction like that they would bring it into something else. They're proud of it. Right.
It meant something to them in their lives, and it meant something so important to me in my life at the same time. So it's, that's kind of that's the best situation always, is when you give something and somebody gives something back to you, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
A surprise, a good gift. So this concludes our time then. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been fun.